Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. Today, we are discussing dimensions of culture. This is chapter 7 in a Jandt book, but remember, I add in some supplemental resources for you guys to read as well. So we're going to jump right in. Okay, so the first part of the dimensions of culture is actually focused on individualism versus collectivism. Basically, individualism means that you go through life, or individuals go through life, and their interests supersede our basically are better than all of the other interests of the group. So if you work for an individualist company, that means that sometimes they honor the top individual or the best person for, the month or etc. And then collectivist companies, those are companies or groups that value the group. So if they honor the department of the year, or if they honor the goodness. And a lot of Asian countries are like this. They are collectivists and they have a collectivist culture when it comes to the workplace, and they value the group over the interests of the individual. So, just to give you another example, individualist cultures tend to define people by what they have. So, if you think about the cars, the houses, their accomplishments, how much money they have in the bank, their jewelry, their degrees, things of that nature, those cultures tend to value what people have, so the material things. Collectivist culture, basically, they value the what a group has, so a family, what a family has, or what a company or a corporation has been able to accomplish, or what a culture has been able to accomplish. So collectivist culture versus individualist culture. And also, individuals can be individualist or collectivist. So for instance, if I am in a relationship and I value, like, everything is about what I want to do or what I could bring to a company, and then you have the oh goodness, I don't know what just happened, guys. There we go. Oh, yeah, that worked. Okay, so for instance, if you are focused on your interests instead of the interests of your family or things of that nature, you could be considered as individualist. But if you are focused on the interests of your family and what a decision could do to affect your spouse or your significant other, then that could be perceived as a individualist perspective. Collectivist, basically, you're considering everyone when you're making decisions. All right. So, in some societies, your last name may actually be more important than your first name. So, your last name can actually state what kind of people you come from, or the accomplishments of your family. This is very prevalent in Asia and also sometimes in Europe as well. Your last name can tell people volumes about who you are and what your family has or has not accomplished. Okay, some other things I want you guys to keep in mind. Some determining factors of individualist or collectivist cultures. So I'm using the acronyms the letters I and C. So wealth is a determining factor of an individualist culture. So if a country has a lot of wealth, has a lot of income that comes in that country, if their currency is worth a lot of money, that means that it is usually going to be a very individualist culture. A cold climate is also an indicator of an individualist culture. And if you think about it, cultures that usually don't have a lot of opportunities to go meet people outside of the cold, or historically outside of the house and or outside of school, then those are considered to be individualist culture, because sometimes they spend a lot of time alone. And then also collectivist cultures could be considered the cultures that have high birth rates. And with those cultures, usually you'll have people with a lot of babies and a lot of births per mother, because those are considered to be, I mean, if with high birth rates, that means that you potentially have a lot of time to get out to have relationships with people, and so or with a person, and so that could be considered an indicator of a collectivist culture as well. And then also look at the history of the culture. So does it have a history of being collectivist or individualist? So just keep those in mind. Okay, so also there's a masculinity versus femininity. And with masculine cultures, those are cultures that strive for maximum distinction. That means clear cut distinction between male and female roles. And so those cultures place a high value on assertiveness and, competitions, games, and material success. So think about what I just mentioned, and also think about how, if let's go back to this slide so you guys can see it. If you think about wealth is a determining factor of individualist culture. So sometimes masculine cultures are also individualist cultures. Okay, also feminine cultures, those are cultures that sometimes permit the overlapping of roles for the sexes. So that means, like, maybe instead of men being home builders, women will be home builders, or instead of men being or women being nurses, men will be nurses as well. So historically, those roles have both been consumed or assumed by a specific gender, and so now sometimes in feminine cultures, those roles overlap. So the determining factors of masculine versus feminine or masculine and feminine cultures is geography. So the colder the climate, the higher the feminine based cultures. So maybe less time for competition or assertiveness because you know the people that you are around. I'm not sure. Also, birth rates. Women have a stronger say in how many children. If women have a stronger say in how many children that the family will have, that is considered to be a feminine culture. Okay, let's move on. All right. Also, we have power distance. And I really love power distance because it's how close or how far you stand from people when you're communicating with them and how comfortable you feel with that distance. So, power distance is also considered the way cultures deal with inequities or inequalities. So, there's a researcher named Hofstede, and he believed that power distance is learned early in families. So, how you learn as a 2-year old, 3-year old, the basically how wealthy or how equal your family is with another family, that's learned early in families according to Hofstede. Also, power distance is the extent to which power, prestige, and wealth are distributed throughout a culture. So basically, I know you guys have heard like the 99%, 1% has most of the wealth, 99% has, the least amount of wealth. That is prevalent not only in this culture, but also in a lot of other cultures as well. So power distance is how close you can actually become to earning more wealth than you have been that were you were used to growing up. So that is considered a and depending on where you are in which state, and also if your country or rural or urban or suburban, power distance can be different with those as well. But I want you guys to think about how a high power distance workplace culture would look, and then also how a low power distance workplace culture would look. So if you have a high power distance culture, you have a lot of floors between maybe the workers who work on the first floor to the CEOs who are on the 10th floor. Also, low power distance would be an example of, in the workplace, would be an example of, I'm a huge fan of flat workspaces. So that basically means, our co-working spaces. So that basically means that the CEO, everybody is on the same level. There are no offices, there are no doors. You just have your desk, and you sometimes have a spot where you can go have a phone call. But it's basically flattening that power distance for the most part. So that is an example of a low power distance workplace culture. All right. So in the 1970s, the top 1% of the people in the US had an income equal to the top 49 million. And so now, well, not now, but in the 1990s, that's the last time that they did the study, 100 or the top 1% has an income equal to the bottom 100 million. So it's interesting. That gap is widening. Also, Brazil historically has had the largest gap. The poor constitutes half or more of the population, and they earn 12% of the national income. Also, the potential determining factors of power distance, basically higher latitudes. That means the if you think about, if a country is mountainous, or if it has a lot of valleys and hills or mountains, that is considered to be a low power distance culture, because I mean, in order to climb those, or in order to have homes or to live in those high altitudes, then it's usually not going to be achieved, because living on top of a mountain is usually not a thing. Also, or sometimes people do it. Also, if you have a large population, you have a high probability of having a high power distance between the people who have a lot of wealth and the people who do not have a lot of wealth. Also, national wealth, so how wealthy the country is, that is also an indication of low power distance because it's able to be potentially distributed amongst the individuals who are living within that country. And also romance, if there is a wealth of relationships, then that is also considered to be a high power distance culture as well. And also, if it has a history of having a Germanic language, then that is also considered to be a low power distance culture. Everyone is almost the same. So if you think about countries like Germany and the countries surrounding it, and if the countries have a history of Germanic language, then that is considered to be a low power distance culture. All right, guys, moving on. Okay, so uncertainty avoidance. I love this too because it is the need for predictability or the need for written and unwritten rules. So to know what to do and what not to do. And we all need to know that because you guys, I just traveled back from England and it's very interesting. I landed in the country and I didn't know what to talk about, what not to talk about, and what was common conversation and what was not. And then also the rules are different. If you do certain things, you can be arrested. The streets were very clean, so imagine they have a wealth of litter laws, or litter laws as well regarding trash. So it's very, very interesting. Also, if you ride the tube without a ticket, not that I did that, but then there are lots of implications for that. And also, one thing that was interesting recently, there have been I guess there was a knife fight or something of that nature, and that was considered. I mean, violence in that country is strongly considered to be a no-no. I mean, like guns are almost non-existent as well for the most part, and so it's very interesting because even overhearing conversations about guns and also violence was very interesting. All right, so let's move on. So high uncertainty avoidance cultures, those are those cultures that are active, aggressive, emotional, they get fired up about issues, compulsive, and potentially intolerant. Um, and these uncertainty avoidance situations, that basically means that basically you in that culture, what to do and what not to do, and the rules are evident. Um, there was if I'll post a picture a little bit later, but before you get on the tube, and it's like the train that goes around the city of London, they basically state if you do not mind the gap. That basically means if you do not adhere to the gap between the train and the platform or the sidewalk on the subway, then that means that there are rules for that, and you can potentially have some. I mean, not that you will be prosecuted, but I mean they want you to know that is a no-no to make sure that everyone's safe. Also, in low uncertainty avoidance cultures, those cultures do not have a lot of rules. They have tolerance for uncertainty, and those are people who are potentially less aggressive, unemotional, relaxed, accepting a personal risk, and tolerant. So if you think about rules potentially in some, not all, some Caribbean countries, they have low uncertainty avoidance. So it's just very interesting. So maybe not as many rules as we have in the United States. Okay, so let's look at what education looks like in both types of cultures. So in high uncertainty avoidance cultures, students want experts, and then the people want rules. I mean, you want to know, like, I need a rule for this or a rule for that. So it is a very, and I would say, for the most part, every state that I've visited or lived in the United States, for the most part, has had a very high uncertainty avoidance. And also, if you think about low uncertainty avoidance, those are educational situations where students do not desire experts because everyone learns the content together and digest the content together. And also in the workplace, workers work hard only when needed, and also precision and punctuality have to be learned. So it's not necessarily on time. When you show up, you show up, and if it's 1 hour late, yeah, that's just the culture that you're visiting. Also, potential determining factors of cultures that have a uncertainty avoidance or high uncertainty avoidance would be oops, there we are, would be if the culture is Christian, they have a high uncertainty avoidance. If it is a Judaic or Muslim or Eastern religion based country, they have a potentially have a low uncertainty avoidance. Okay, moving on, y'all. Okay, also we have long term orientation and also short term orientation. So, long term orientation basically means how you see yourself a few years down the road. So, that basically means if you have a low long term orientation, that means that you are focused on what the future looks like. They are focused on longevity with a company. Also, they are historically more dedicated, motivated, responsible, educated individuals with a sense of commitment, organizational identity, and loyalty. And y'all, I'll work something else in here as well. I want you to think about generations. Okay, short term orientation, those are cultures that are spending to keep up with social pressure, have potentially less savings, preference for quick results, quick fast, think about fast food, and also concern with face. So I want you to think about generations. So we had the millennials, we had the new silent generation, that's the generation, like those are the kids of the millennials. So I have a new silent generation person right beside me right now. Say hi. She says hi silently. Anyway, well, no pun intended, right? And then also, my parent is my husband is actually a Generation X person, and then and I'm Generation Y, and my daughter Generation Z, or the new silent generation. Then my mom was a baby boomer, so and my dad was a baby boomer as well. So it's very interesting. But when you look at this, I want you to think about the different generations and how they perceive long term versus short term. If you think about long term, those are people who want to get a job, stay with it for a long time, and commit to that job. Short term might be a person who has a need to, and I like this as well, like the gig economy. You find something on Fiverr or you freelance, things of that nature. So it's short term versus long term, even regarding generations and also ethnic or ethnicities within the country. Also, let's talk about environmental sustainability. And this is very interesting. So, a few years ago, I traveled with a group of two more faculty members and then also 30 undergraduate students to go to the Dominican Republic. And it was interesting because historically, the island has not focused on sustainability as much as it has now because of the laws that have been implemented. But it's a country within the Caribbean, and so trash and things of that nature, that was a potentially a big problem a few years ago, but now they are very focused on environmental sustainability because they only have one island. It's that's all you have, so you want to keep it clean and keep it safe. So the definition of environmental sustainability basically means the development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So for example, I'm from East Texas. I'm East Texan culture. So we have a lot of pine trees, and pine trees produce wood. They also can produce firewood for burning fire or combusting. They also have produce a lot of pine straw, a lot of pine straw, and those are the pine needles. But those can be used for decorating flower beds and things of that nature. So East Texas really sustains itself. But if you think about this part of Texas, trees do not grow that readily. And also, if you cut down a tree, you're not going to see that tree for a while. So, unless you plant it again. So, it's very, very, very interesting to focus on environmental sustainability, even from a Texas standpoint. So, in the United States, we are focused on high water quality. We're focused on environmental protection capacity and also low performance. And we have low performance in waste generation and greenhouse gas. So that means we're focused on environmental sustainability, and other countries are as well. But some countries may be more focused on it than we are. So it just depends. Also, let me just put this out there as well. There is a 7+ mile stretch of trash in the ocean because some countries and some ships and shipping containers and also historically cruise lines have enabled waste to swim in the ocean, and so it collects in this big trash mass. And so there are some countries that are very focused on clearing out that trash mass in the ocean. And so those are countries, for example, who would be very focused on environmental sustainability. But let's leave with some parting questions. So the first one is, would individualists or collectivists tend to use direct language? So basically, to ask someone, direct questions about maybe their religious affiliation or what they do for work, things of that nature. And also, question two is, in which cultures do you think the United States would fall? Are we individualist or are we collectivist? That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Dr. Jennifer Edwards. I'm at Tarleton State University in the Communication Studies and the Higher Education Department, and I'm excited that you joined. Please take time to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search for DRJT Edwards, and then also follow me on Twitter. I'm at DRJT Edwards. Have a good day, everyone.